Based on a real-life incident, the film takes place in the mid-1970s, introducing us to a young American named Max Erickson, who was asleep on a bus until he saw a Vietnamese girl who reminded him of his past. Years earlier, we see a rookie Max in the Vietnam War as part of Lieutenant Riley's platoon. During a nighttime patrol in the Vietnamese jungle, the soldiers try to remain as silent as possible, but one of them starts shooting at nothing, swearing he saw an enemy. As a result, Viet Cong soldiers discover the Americans' location and begin shelling them with mortars. In the middle of the chaos, Max gets stuck in a hole leading to the Vietnamese underground tunnels. His cries for help are heard on the surface by Sergeant Meserve, while below, a Vietnamese soldier approaches him. Luckily, Meserve manages to pull him out of the hole before the enemy can stab him. Once they join forces, Max and Meserve take out several Vietnamese fighters, although the sergeant is more violent than usual. At dawn, the surviving members of the squad settle in a friendly Vietnamese village, where Max tries to bond with the local children but is forbidden from doing so by Meserve. Shortly afterward, the soldiers are enjoying a well-deserved rest in the field when one of them, Brown, is riddled with bullets by enemies hidden in the jungle. The Americans return fire while trying to keep Brown stable as he prepares for his death, but his comrades assure him he will recover. After the attack and after Brown is evacuated by a medical helicopter, the Americans prepare to search for a new base, but not before burning the village for having sold them out. Back at the main camp, the squad is ready to enjoy their free time until everything changes when Meserve tells them that Brown has died. Furious about this, the soldier Clark vows revenge against all Vietnamese people and hopes his country will wipe them out. That night, Meserve's squad heads to the nearest town to hang out at a bar, but the American guards refuse to let them in. Although no official reason is given, Meserve deduces that there are Viet Cong in that village and that the guards are protecting them. Back at camp, the sergeant prepares them for their next mission in the Vietnamese jungle, to kidnap a young Vietnamese girl for fun. Additionally, they have fewer than 30 days of service left and feel they can do whatever they want. All the soldiers take him seriously except Max, who thinks Meserve is joking. Nevertheless, that same night, Meserve and his men infiltrate a village to abuse a young girl named Owen, while Max is left stunned by what he sees. The soldiers take the girl in front of her family and neighbors, who can only weep at such an atrocity. Owen's mother insists on giving her a handkerchief, which the soldiers use to muffle the girl's cries, even though it does little good. Max apologizes to Owen's family. After a long journey with the kidnapped girl, Max tries to tell Meserve that they are doing something wrong, to which the sergeant responds by putting him at the head of the platoon. If they are attacked, Max would be the first to fall. When they stop to rest, Clark begins to harass Owen, so the new squad member Antonio wonders if he must do the same. Max tells him no. Before Clark can do anything to the girl, the soldier Hatcher fires into the open because he believes he has spotted a Viet Cong, although it turns out to be just a buffalo. Seeing the girl so shaken, Meserve gives her an aspirin and some water, calming her down. Still, Max questions him again about the kidnapping, and Meserve confidently states that she is a possible Viet Cong, so they can do whatever they want with her. Since Max remains doubtful, Meserve points out that their allies are not Viet Cong, then roughly lifts Owen to show him what a real Viet Cong looks like. As punishment for his wavering loyalty, Max must carry his squad mates' backpacks along with Owen, who is used as a pack mule. Later on, the squad finds a ruined hut, which they turn into their new camp. When their superiors step away, Antonio whispers to Max that he does not want to abuse the girl, something both men agree on. While Owen cleans the hut, Max notices a wound on her back. Very gently, he takes care of it, making it clear he means her no harm. Shortly afterward, Meserve apologizes to Max for the punishment and, to smooth things over, asks for his help to abuse Owen. The rookie immediately refuses, provoking the sergeant's anger, as no one had ever dared to defy his orders before. Since all his comrades side against him, Max seeks support from Antonio, who, out of fear, sides with the sergeant. Because of this, Meserve thinks Max is homosexual and is in love with Antonio. The sergeant even promises him that when he is done with Owen, he will have fun with him. Max adopts a defensive stance and points his gun at the sergeant, who remains unmoved, because he knows Max lacks the nerve to pull the trigger. Instead, he proceeds to assault Owen while Max walks away from the camp. When Meserve finishes, it is Antonio's turn, and he goes through with it because of peer pressure. The next day, the squad discovers a Vietnamese camp along the banks of a river. So the sergeant sends Max and Hatcher back to the hut to look for ammunition. Tired of guarding Owen, Clark replaces Max on the mission, leaving the rookie in charge of the hut. Seeing the girl crying inconsolably, Max decides to untie her and apologizes for the savagery they inflicted on her. Then, he realizes she is burning with fever, so he gives her food and water. As soon as Clark arrives with the others, Meserve orders him to return to camp, as Max cannot be left alone with his slave. His suspicions are confirmed when Max frees Owen and urges her to return to her village. He cannot go with her, however, because that would make him a deserter. But, because she begs him so much, the rookie has no choice but to join her on the journey until Clark intercepts them and brings them back to the others. While they keep an eye on the Viet Cong camp, Owen begins coughing uncontrollably. Meserve orders her killed so she will not reveal their position. Of course, Max refuses, claiming that Brown would have been against kidnapping her. Then Meserve orders Hatcher to take care of Owen, but he also refuses. As a result, the submissive Antonio must do the dirty work. Max fires a shot into the air to start a shootout with the Viet Cong. While Max faces the enemy, Clark takes advantage of the distraction to stab Owen brutally. Even so, the girl gets up and tries to flee in the chaos, but Meserve notices. Max tries to rush to help her, but the sergeant punches him, and together with his allies, they shoot Owen until she is dead. Seconds later, an American naval and air fleet arrives to bomb the Viet Cong camp. Seeing so much carnage, including Owen's corpse, Max passes out. After waking up in the base hospital, Max reunites with his friend Rowan and tells him about the atrocities committed by Meserve's group. Their conversation is overheard by Clark, who makes it clear that what happens at the front stays at the front. Since Meserve would kill him for snitching, Max goes to Lieutenant Riley, who decides to split up his squad and forget the matter. As crazy as it sounds to the rookie, the lieutenant claims these things happen in war. Later, while Max mentions to Rowan that he will go to see Captain Hill, the soldiers are startled by an explosion. Tragically, a poor rookie who had recently asked Max for help steps on a mine. That tragedy makes Max realize that, although their time in that hell is limited, it does not mean they can do whatever atrocity they please. On the contrary, they must act honorably to leave behind a worthy legacy. When he has a chance to talk to Captain Hill, the captain explains that although Meserve and his men did something wrong, publicly reporting their case would cause an international scandal. Besides, as war veterans, they would be released from prison soon enough and seek vengeance on Max, who should think of his wife and daughter first. That night, Max goes into a small cabin to smoke quietly, when suddenly Hatcher walks in and greets Clark, who was outside about to throw a grenade into the cabin. Thanks to that, the rookie manages to jump out just before the explosion. Furious, Max grabs a shovel and heads for Meserve's group to attack Clark. Still, he admits Meserve is right. He told everyone about their crimes, and nobody cared. While Max drowns his sorrows in alcohol at the local bar, a military chaplain approaches him. Max tells him about Owen and what his comrades did to her. But above all else, he regrets that he could not help her. Therefore, Max decides to push the case forward so the authorities will investigate Meserve's squad. One by one, the soldiers confess their crimes in a court-martial, and they are sentenced to many years of hard labor in a disciplinary prison. In the next scene, we see Max waking up on the bus after recalling his time in the Vietnam War. Throughout the trip, a young Vietnamese girl had been watching him, and at the end of the route, she gets off, leaving her scarf behind. Max immediately gets off the bus to give it back to her and tells her that she reminds him of someone. The girl soon recognizes that he had a nightmare, says something in her native language, and leaves. Hearing that, Max finally feels a glimmer of hope and returns to his daily life with renewed spirit.
If you want interesting movie recaps, like, share, and subscribe to follow us for more movie recaps.